Next time on Star Trek Deep Space Nine, a Bajoran terrorist seeks refuge on board the space station.
He has committed brutal acts of destruction.
I want Bajor for Bajorans.
But where do Kira's loyalties lie?
You expect me to commit some act of violence against the Federation?
There is an armed bilithium explosive device on board this ship. No more wormhole, no more Federation.
Next time on Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
There's a bigger issue here. Just because a group of people belong to the Federation, it does not mean that they are saints. The trouble is Earth. On Earth, there is no poverty, no crime, no war. You look out the window of Starfleet headquarters and you see paradise. Well, it's easy to be a saint in paradise. Out there, all the problems haven't been solved yet. Out there are no saints, just people. Angry, scared, determined people who are going to do whatever it takes to survive.
What I want to know is, out of all the stories you told me, which ones were true and which ones weren't?
My dear doctor, they're all true.
Even the lies.
Especially the lies.
On behalf of the Bajoran government
And the Promenade Merchants Association,
I officially welcome you to Deep Space Nine.
Hello, everyone out there in podcast land. Welcome to Especially the Lies, a Star Trek Deep Space Nine podcast. We are a group of newbies watching Deep Space Nine for the very first time, and a group of Beyond the Wormhole people, I don't know, that are watching. Jessi's like, nah, it's not working. And we are watching Deep Space Nine for the umpteenth time. For me, probably about 1,000 times. My name is Plain Simple Scott, and I'm with
Emily,
Mike,
Jessi,
Nicole,
Christopher,
Shannon,
Prentice.
There's a new name. And we're also missing Blake. Blake's out this week. But Christopher, who the hell are you?
Who am I?
who are you? And
I didn't think we were going to get this existential.
That's the other podcast. Who are you and what you want?
I don't know how to answer this question.
Well, you're in your 40s. You probably should figure this out soon.
Yeah.
Just saying.
So,
sleep with you or Jessi's first ex-husband?
I am Jessi's first ex-husband.
Story time.
No stories.
I really don't know how to answer this.
Have you watched Star Trek before?
Have I watched Star Trek before? Yes, I have.
Have you watched this show before?
I have not.
Then you're a newbie. There you go.
So Christopher is joining the newbie group because we didn't feel we had enough newbies or penises on this show. So we're very glad to have Christopher on.
Plenty of penises for the first.
Yeah, there's enough around here, okay?
Less than 5 minutes. Let's throw in a penis reference.
Too many dicks.
Too many.
Too many dicks on the dance floor.
That's why I love you, Mike. I love that show.
You know, we got to make sure, because this is only the second episode, and we have some new people who are joining us who did not listen to our Grey 17 Babylon 5 podcast.
Oh.
So you got to know what you're getting into. So I figure I'll throw it up there in the front, get all those people out of here, and then only the nutcases will stick around. That's the goal.
Well, in that case, I'm a nutcase.
Well, we brought you in, so yes. So, Christopher, I know that you were not with us when we talked about Emissary, but I know you did catch up and watched it.
It was a little slow, but it's a pilot. There's a lot of introduction of characters. So I'm figuring that the pacing is going to pick up, but otherwise I enjoyed it. It was interesting to me that Cisco is a commander and not a captain. I like that there were a lot of baseball references. That seems to be something that I'm hoping continues. I'm interested to see where this goes because every other Trek is kind of on a starship and this is on a space station. So how is it different from being on base instead of a ship?
Yeah, on the pacing issue, by about the 60th episode, I'm sure you'll be happy.
Great.
Season 1 and Season 2, it's going to be fun.
They're good seasons. Don't scare them.
Well, I scare them all with the last show, and Jessi actually thought that Season 1 of the last show was one of the better ones. So if I scare them all now and make them start thinking that season 1 is not good, then maybe they'll like it.
No, you were dead on with season 5. I wanted to poke my eye out the whole fucking season. So,
well, I can tell you that unlike certain other shows, I do believe that we have a steady increase through the entire series. Although I would say probably season 6 is my favorite season of this show, but we'll get there. Today we're here to talk about the second episode, or actually the third episode, but the second after the pilot, and that is Past Prologue. And I do believe our good friend Jessi has a synopsis for us.
I do. Is it Bajor or is it Bajor?
Bajor.
Bajor? Okay. Yeah. Bajoran terrorist tests Kira's loyalties to the Federation when he attempts to rid Bajor of the Federation for good.
It's okay. You're only going to hear that word about 5 million times in this show.
You'll get it.
We'll get it.
Well,
it'll be the new Ivanova.
Yes. It took me a whole season. So
before we get started talking about the episode, a reminder to check out the links down below. We have our social medias linked. And if you're listening to our audio podcast, check out the YouTube. And if you're on YouTube, we also have the audio podcast. And if you can, we would love for you to go over to Apple or Spotify or Audible and leave us a review, because that really does help get the word out. Okay, so let's go through our first impressions on Past Prologue, and we'll go to our newbies first. And Nicole, first impressions on Past Prologue?
Well, first I want to point out that I heard the space noise. You know, that like zzz, that like buzz that you hear in the background. I didn't notice it the first episode, but when Kira was talking to Otto in his office, I noticed it. And I was like, oh, that's kind of comforting. I kind of want that as white noise when I sleep.
There actually is, if you go to YouTube, there are like 48 hours of Star Trek background noise.
Yeah, it's just like that hum that's like steady. And then I couldn't stop noticing it throughout the whole episode. So I assume that's going to continue on. But that was the first thing that I just had to bring up, because I even wrote it down and highlighted. I'm like, I heard the space noise. But yeah, overall, I thought it was a really good episode. I still hate the Cardassians, and it's really hard for me not to call them Kardashians because I hate them too. It was really interesting because we got to see a little bit more background on Kira and learn a little bit more about the Bajorans and like the Konma and all that. And so I feel like it really kind of went full throttle into some of the backstories of some of these characters. And I really like that, because coming into the show, I don't know jack shit. I feel like almost like I know some of the characters a little better after this episode and their character and who they are. And so I really, really liked that. The Klingons were fucking weird. I did not like them. What was the other thing? Oh, that whole like bomb thing was kind of terrifying. Like the fact that they had this whole plan to like blow up all this. It was just really, it was kind of one of those episodes where like there were so many things happening. It was almost like Whiplash, but in a good way. So I really enjoyed it.
Shannon, you're up. First impressions.
Dr. Clueless almost screwed everything up again. I wanted to say it before anyone else could. Did he really think they wanted him to buy a suit? Like, how clueless is this guy of like, I need you to be here in the background to find out about a plot. And he's like, do I really need a suit? I am not impressed with this guy. First impressions, and then he was late. They said 23:55 or whatever, and he gets there late. First impression, still not impressed by Dr. Clueless.
I think I mentioned in the last episode too, for a while, Alexander Siddig was being looked at as potentially being cast as Commander Sisko. So just think Siddig as Commander Sisko, and just let that seep in for just a little bit.
To be fair, though, if you've seen him act in other roles, other shows, like I remember
I've only watched this episode and one other. Isn't that the point? Not impressed.
Well, no. He's talking about other shows.
I was just gonna say, like, I saw that same actor portray like the patriarch of like a powerful family in Game of Thrones, and like he has range. He plays a clueless guy in first few episodes of this show, and he plays a really pretty menacing guy in these other shows.
Who was he in Game of Thrones?
He was only in a couple of episodes.
He was like the sand people, whatever they're called. He was the patriarch of that group.
Yeah, like the father of the 3 daughter assassins.
Yeah,
and like
like, you know, the one bastards are called snow, but if you're in the desert, you're called sand or whatever it was, and he was the dad of that. He was also a terrorist in 24 because he's Arab, and therefore he has to be a terrorist in 24.
And what does that have to do with the show we're supposed to be talking about? Already derailed. Already derailed.
Scott was bringing up that for a minute they were going to have him play the captain, and I was just basically saying that I think he probably could have done it.
If anyone would like to replace Shannon on the show, please send your email too.
You're gonna have to get used to them derailing because that's what they do all fucking day long.
Okay, we're gonna move right along, and we will go to Christopher. First impressions.
My first impressions of this episode were, I think for me, the major, she switched like allegiances very quickly. Like in the first episode, she was very much against the Federation, and in this one, and I'm not sure how much time has passed or how much time has passed between the pilot and this episode. She did get a new haircut. She was a lot more in favor of the Federation than she seemed to be in the first episode, and I thought that because of her past, I thought that was kind of a quick switch. Like I didn't see that coming so quickly for her, for what you learn about her in this episode. Regarding the doctor, he seems like a bumbling fool. I like it. Like he wants to be important. He wants to be special. And, so he wanted to be this spy, and he is incapable of it. And I think it's hilarious. Another thing that caught my attention was the friend, the Kanma, was it Tanma Laos?
Yep.
The interactions that he had with the Major, and how it seemed to me like they were, there's this battle between certain factions in Bajor that really want their independence. And it seems to me like they're setting up two different types of, are they trading one type of colonialism for another? Getting rid of the Cardassians and just trading it for Starfleet and not being truly independent. I kind of hope they tug at that storyline a little bit more. One final thought that I had, it seems to me that the less attractive that you are as a humanoid in Star Trek, the more likely you are to be the enemy, right? Because like the Klingons are you kind of look at they're less humanoid, they're more like frightening, like their facial features and structures. And then the Cardassians with their face and everything, is just really kind of just weird. And then the Ferengi, the less human you look, the more likely you are to be the villain. Because look at the Bajors, just the little ridges on the nose. Vulcans have pointy ears. So I don't know. If you're not the less human like you are you more likely to be the villain?
So you didn't like the Duras sisters?
Man, that was some fine Klingon cleavage. What are y'all talking about?
There was 4 sisters for the Durases.
They had excellent birds of prey.
Jessi, how about you? First impressions?
It was okay. I watched it, so there's that.
Excellent.
I didn't have Klingon titties on my 2024 bingo card, but here we are. Holy shit. I want to see the male Klingons, because if they don't have their titties out, I'm about to be pissed.
Funny story. Emily just threw up 2 fingers. We talked about in Babylon 5, Londo having 6. Klingons have 2.
2 what?
Benai.
Stop it. I don't want to see. No, it's episode 2. We're not there yet, okay? But we're talking about titties.
I don't think they're going to show you them, Jessi.
I didn't even notice the boobs, so.
Oh my God, they were just out.
Did you not notice them?
Yeah. It was quality
Nicole
cleavage.
is absolutely straight, is what we found out today.
Quality cleavage happening there.
One was better than the other one, but listen, if the male Klingons don't have their titties out, I'm writing a letter to somebody. I don't know who, but.
Oh, okay. Let's go over to our I don't know what to call us yet, but those of us who have already watched the show. Prentice, what do you got for first impressions?
Man, first impressions, I forgot how naive Dr. Bashir was in the beginning, but I'm glad to see he progresses later on. One, the interaction between Kira and Commander Sisko was funny to me. They had a workplace snafu where she tried to go around his back and call his superiors. And the way he handled that was so funny to me. You kind of let her know, like, yeah, next time you go over my head, we'll have a different conversation. It reminds me of that conversation between Commander Riker and Commander, what's her name? In Best of Both Worlds?
Shelby.
Shelby. That it was done a little bit better than that situation. So I love how they're setting up the tension in the show, which is different than the Next Generation and the other shows. That is letting you know these people don't necessarily like each other. They're working through their issues and they're trying to figure things out. So this is really cool seeing the Duras sisters. Let me talk about them. I always thought they were very funny. How duplicit and overly sexualized they always were in the Star Trek series, right? So every time they came on the show, I always thought it was really funny because they would always be so obvious about their plots and schemes. Now, another thing I will point out in this episode is that I like that I'm recognizing actors that are in other series in Star Trek, like Vaughn Armstrong, that's his name. You later see him in Enterprise, but he was also an early Klingon in the TNG era as well. So I didn't know he was in this episode until I looked at it again and I saw him as the Cardassian commander in this episode. But overall, I just think this is really good world building for Star Trek. At least with this series, you get a chance to know people, their backstory, and it really pays off later on. So those are my kind of impressions about watching it over again. I think this is maybe the 6th time I've seen this episode.
Vaughn Armstrong has played, it looks like, 12 different characters in Trek.
Yeah.
He's been in DS9, TNG, Voyager. Obviously, he was in Enterprise as Admiral Forrest. And he was also a Klingon in Enterprise and a other alien in Enterprise.
So is he up there next to Jeffrey Combs for the...
It looks like.
Oh, yeah.
Mike, first impressions.
I really liked this episode. I had tried to embark on a full DS9 rewatch a few years back, and I guess my lasting impression was that the first few seasons were actually quite hard to get through. And in fact, I didn't. I stopped at like season 3, probably because Battlestar or something else came on, and I just was enjoying that more. But yeah, I was kind of pleasantly surprised by just how good this episode was. I felt like it really dove right into some of the meat of what makes DS9 a great show and different from traditional Trek in the way that it tackled that storyline about kind of as the other guy said, colonialism and even touching on sensitive topics like terrorism, because that's not something that TNG eventually got to addressing some of those things in various storylines, but it took them quite a few seasons before they put Utopia behind them and got real. And DS9, as we said last episode, when we talked about the first impressions on the pilot, DS9 is much more real, much more grounded, some of the realest characters in all of Star Trek. And you see that again here too. I think there's a lot of great character development with Kira and Tanalos and kind of what their background is and where they're both going and how their paths are diverging. And I'm really excited to talk about the storyline as the episode gets, as we get into some of the other parts of it. So overall though, yeah, I was like, wow, this episode really hit the ground running for this series. So very, very pleased.
Emily.
I love this episode. Not just because of the Klingon cleavage, although that's a nice little perk. I do.
A nice little perk.
Yep, I said it. You can put that on a fucking t-shirt. Klingon cleavage, a nice little perk.
Wow.
Scott might be back there dying or trying not to pee his pants. I'm not sure. I like that we get more of a background on Kira and how difficult of a position she is in. I mean, realistically speaking, given her background with Cardassians and fighting for Bajoran independence and the things she had done that she was still trying to deal with or cope with or reconcile, who she used to be and who she's trying to become. And it also shows how unique of a position DS9 is in, because they have people coming from everywhere and they're stationed near Bajor because they're trying to be the Starfleet presence to keep the Cardassians back in their own fucking space. And then there's the wormhole and there's just a lot going on. So I do like that it starts to highlight more of the complexity of what the station will be experiencing. And I really forgot how much I enjoyed Garrick just fucking with Bashir. Coming up to him and Bashir's oh, is he a spy? Is he hitting him?
I thought he was hitting on him at first. I was like, are they going down this road? But then I remembered that like they made a really big deal in Discovery about the doctor and the science officer being the first like openly gay couple, and I was like, oh well, that's disappointing that they're not going there. I thought it would have been funny because I think he's supposed to be like the heartthrob of the series, would be my guess.
I will say years later, Andrew Robinson, who played Garrick, was asked the same question. He said, I absolutely played it like Garrick was after Bashir sexually. That's how I played every interaction.
That's how it totally comes off.
Oh, absolutely. And it's amazing. It's impressive how well he plays like the awkward, uncomfortable, I have no idea what's happening in this scenario. Like to me, it's quite believable that he's just confused as hell.
Yeah, he has no idea what's going on. he has no idea if he's being hit on, if he's being recruited to be a spy, and how he goes and like tattles like right away to the commander.
And even that is like kind of calls him out, like, what would he want with you? And that totally flies over his head.
For me, this is an interesting start to a show because, for one, this is the first episode of Trek ever. And we're talking the original series, the animated series. About half of the Next Generation has already come out at this point. This is the first episode of Trek ever to not have the Enterprise or mention the Enterprise in it. So that is DS9 saying, okay, we're going to be something different. That being said, they immediately go back to a Next Generation character, or two of them, with the Lursa and Bator. They were absolutely in TNG, and they went to get them into this story to help bridge, again, the old show versus the new show. DS9 is still trying to find its legs, but I'm like with Mike. I mean, I've gone through season 1 a bit, and I'm always intrigued by how much these first few episodes really do start off well. And I love the fact that, and we're going to see this as we go, there's going to be episodes here in the first few bits where each character gets a moment, so we get to learn about them more. This week it's Kira, next week it's going to be Odo, and so forth and so on. So I think that's a good way to start a series as well. Let's go ahead and get started talking about the show proper. And of course, the big thing is Kira and her interactions with her terrorist buddy and with Cisco. So let's go ahead and start chatting about that. What do you guys want to talk about? Nicole.
So I thought that she played the part very well, in the sense of like, it was almost palpable how she felt torn in a way. She was trying to reconcile who she was and who she is now, and like where she's at and what she wants to do going forward. And I thought that the actress just did such a great job, because when she was talking to Odo in the office and stuff, like, it was just very like, you can feel her like kind of what's the word I'm looking for, how she was like kind of torn up a little. And she's trying to convince Tanalos that this is her way of doing it, and he's making her second guess herself. And I just really liked from the start and the end of the episode, like just the progression and like her journey. I thought it was really well played. It was very interesting, and it really kind of showed you her character a little bit. And I just really enjoyed like watching her kind of process that and go through it, and in the end doing the right thing. So yeah, I thought it was really interesting to kind of get that insight into her. And I'm more interested now to see what's going to happen going forward, because clearly she's not fully on board with them all being there, and her and Cisco are going to butt heads a little bit. But I feel like, in a way, at the end of the episode, when they kind of came together and they were like walking down the hallway, maybe they almost met like an understanding, like maybe a respect for each other in a way. And I could be totally off on that, but I just thought that was kind of a moment that was small. There was no words spoken, but it was very poignant, I thought.
I thought the interaction with her and Odo, I believe it was them. What really stood out to me was he said the only important thing is not to betray yourself. You know, on her, you know, with her thinking, what do I do? How do I react to this? And this is growth from who she was to who she is, and her changing ideals, and that as long as she stays true to who she is, she can't do wrong, I think. And I thought that was an important part, you know, an important part of wisdom to be, kind of given to her so she can do the right thing.
He's a wise puddle of goo.
We haven't even seen him in his bucket yet. Give it time. Give it time.
Yeah, so he's clearly not Bajoran.
No,
right?
he's wearing a Bajoran uniform, and we'll hear more about this next week, so it's not spoilers. But he's wearing a Bajoran uniform because he was part of the station before Starfleet came, and so Bajorans were on the station as well as Cardassians, obviously. So he was around for a bit, and we'll learn more about that as we go.
Kind of funny that he's arguably one of the most interesting characters, or the most, if not interesting, I'm trying to one of the most standout characters because of his shape-shifting ability and stuff. And he's also the one that in these last 2 episodes, or 3 if you count the pilot as the 2-parter that it is, that got the least attention. They're definitely buried that lead a little bit and left the audience to wonder what his deal is.
Yeah, I agree. I thought it was really interesting when Kira said in that conversation with him, that can hit hard. And I also thought it was a good kind of idea of their relationship, because Kira doesn't seem to be somebody that trusts easily, but she must trust him because she went to him for advice. And then when he threw in that whole thing about pretense being a human feature, I really enjoyed that whole interaction.
I will just say it now, and I will say it probably a million times over the next 7 seasons. Rene Auberjonois is one of my favorite actors. He is in everything. Christopher, he was in MASH. I mean, he's in everything. So, and of course he passed away a few years ago, but he really does play this character well, especially even in what we've seen, when he's, as Shannon, as you're talking about, working with Kira through her, conflict and figuring it out. But then he doesn't just say, okay, this is what you need to do. He says, he calls Sisko and says, Kira needs to talk to you. He lets her handle it. And I really do like how Odo plays that. It's a good way to show that character off. Anything else on the Kira thing? We haven't even talked about the terrorist side of things yet.
I thought her going to the Admiral was, I understood why she did it in a point, because she felt that Sisko wasn't going to do the right thing in her opinion. But as somebody who is, served, to have someone go around the chain of command like that, it is just the fact that the Admiral came back right away and told Commander Sisko, hey, deal with this problem before it gets worse. And his reaction to it, building that trust with her. And then to have her, to choose her to go on the mission at the end, someone who you can't fully trust. Where do her loyalties lie? And I thought that was a big gamble on Commander Sisko's part. And, it paid off, but it was a huge gamble.
I did make a note that Kira definitely went Karen on Sisko. She definitely went over his head. But I do like, if you go back to Emissary, there's a little, when they're talking about Ops, which is the bridge on this show, and they said that the commander's office is higher, so you have to look up at him. And when they played that scene where Sisko's saying, don't go over my head again, he is looming over her. The same way that whole set is made for that. So he's up there in his office looking down on her saying, we're okay right now. Don't do it again. Okay, so we've talked about Odo and Kira a little bit. I'd love to hear from you guys more on your thoughts on, and we talked a little bit about in first impressions, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on who do we think was in the right here. Some of you talked about colonialization and are you giving up just one ruling partner for another, and so forth and so on. Love to hear from you on that. Nicole.
So what I thought was interesting about how Tanalos saying that he's giving up the violence and all this other stuff, and they're not going to be hurting people anymore and all this, but he was, he had a bomb, which obviously we found out was going to blow up the wormhole thing, but who's to say that people still wouldn't get hurt? And at first, this could be just the naivety in me, but I kind of believed him. I'm like, oh, he's trying to change his ways. He's trying to be peaceful, blah, blah, blah. And then as the episode went on, I'm like, oh no, he's shady. He's not. He's, it was kind of complicated because they were fighting for something. They've been fighting for something for so long. And what Kira was saying is that things have changed and the old methods don't always work. And we've seen this now too. Like, sometimes the old way people do things doesn't always work and you have to change. It was just really an interesting, almost like a juxtaposition in a sense to the former way of doing it, what they were doing, realizing that it doesn't always work the same way and you have to evolve and improvise and change. And I feel like that's where Kira was going, right? She's evolved and she's changing and doing things a different way, still fighting for her people, but in a different sense. And Tanelos wasn't having it, So I thought it was interesting to kind of see from the very beginning, he kind of was like, oh yeah, we're innocent, blah, blah, blah. I want peace and I need amnesty and this and that. She goes out of her way to get all that for her. These other two guys come and it was like all a nefarious plot in the end. So what really changed?
One person's freedom fighter is another person's terrorist.
Yeah, exactly.
And I will say this is where DS9 got a lot of heat right off the bat because Star Trek hasn't gone down this road before. Our second in command is a former terrorist and she is dealing with that. Prentice, what do you got?
Oh, I was going to say that tension about those that were in the revolution, so to speak, and the fight, and then trying to transition into government, right? Those tensions are just big within Deep Space Nine. It's interesting to see how that plays out. But it's always interesting, the narratives, when you have somebody that fought for these rights, fought against these particular factions, and then you ask them to disarm and then play a role in government, and them trying to evolve out of the fighter element into being a bureaucrat. And I see that tension really pronounced in Kira. And you see that struggle. I like how the actress portrays that in this episode and future episodes. She does an excellent job.
Mike?
Yeah, in a way, I really think this whole episode is really all about Kira and her kind of teeing up her character and showing the audience that this is Kira. She's all fury and heat and rage, and she's a hothead. She's quick to anger, quick to mistrust, quick to go around her commander's back. But then they immediately put her up against kind of a mirror of herself, and the difference that they're showing you and that they're showing the audience is one of these people is capable of growth and the other one is not. And I think that is really where this episode hit home for me, like in a big way. And I'll go as far as to say this too, on a kind of an unrelated note. I look at Tanalos's plan in the end, and we can talk more about the whole colonialism aspect of it. But in the end, I honestly kind of went, I'm not entirely sure he's wrong in what he's doing here.
If you spent your entire life fighting for independence and for control and autonomy and your own sovereignty, then you turn around and you give it away in a sense to a broader organization where they allow you to have some autonomy, but you're still part of something greater. Maybe not greater is not the word, but another bureaucratic structure where you don't necessarily get full say in how your planet is rolled. I get where he's coming from, because what did we fight for if only to give it away to the Federation, who really only has interest here because they don't want the Cardassians to take over again.
And that was Kira's point in the last episode. She flat out said the exact same thing. Emily, what do you got?
Just kind of similar in that we see her struggling with the inner conflict and struggling to understand the difference in like the chain of command. Because in the first episode, when she first meets Cisco and she's cleaning up, she makes a snarky remark, assuming he's not going to be hands-on, try to clean the station because of the kind of people she's dealt with so far in Starfleet. So like where she is sitting is very unbalanced. It's unstable. Like she's trying to figure herself out. She's trying to figure out this new system. She's trying to figure out a new commander. Like there are all these pieces that she's trying to navigate, and we can really see her struggling with all of it. And I am glad that she has Odo to talk to, and someone who actually like understands her and knows who she is and her past and can kind of help her walk through it. to get a better grasp on the situation.
Mike.
I think you made an excellent point, and I think it's worth shining a light on. As far as the Federation goes, we've met Picard from if you didn't watch any TNG, we met him last episode. So you have a pretty good idea of what his character is. We've met and really focused on Captain Sisko, Commander Sisko, sorry. and so we have a pretty good idea of who he is, and that he's a good, upstanding, moral character who's strong and smart and etc. What we don't know is we don't know who else the Bajorans have dealt with in the Federation. And I think we could probably all assume that any really big organization has a fair number of shitters, as well as our Siskos and Picards. So she's not wrong to mistrust the Federation coming in and to maybe have some assumptions about who she's dealing with going into it.
And I think it also needs to be pointed out that in the first episode, I believe she said, what happens if this station fails? Well, we go to civil war. That the stakes are that high, right? It's either they are taken over by the Cardassians again, or they're having to rely on Starfleet and maybe not getting all their autonomy, or they could turn to civil war. I mean, the stakes for Bajoran are really, really high.
A couple behind the scenes things I want to throw out here at this point too is in the original script, Tanalos and Kira were romantically engaged prior to this. I'm glad they didn't do that, because I think it's them being colleagues and freedom fighters together is less tropey than if they were, together.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing is, somebody already mentioned that Kira changed her hairstyle. That was actually Nana Visitor, who said she doesn't feel Kira would be styling her hair every day. She's the kind of person who's just going to get up, fix her hair, and go to work. And so that's why that changed. And I think that's one of a great little addition Nana Visitor brought to the character, because she definitely looks more like she's, doesn't care about that kind of stuff. She wants to get to work. Anybody else have anything they want to add about anything at this point?
My only real question is what is with the uniforms? Like, are they shipboard and shore-based uniforms? Look, I'm from the Navy. I know about having 30 different sets of uniforms. But literally changing uniforms to go onto the ship and then onto the station. Sisko did it, and Chief O'Brien as well. I mean, there was a lot of continuity in it, but
have you ever watched Star Trek Generations?
With you once, 20 years ago.
that's when continuity goes out the window. So what they're doing here is, yes, they wanted to have a different uniform. For one, the TNG actors really hated the Next Generation uniforms, so they wanted to have a more worker uniform. And so for the longest time, they are doing if you're on a Federation ship, you wear the TNG uniform. If you're on a station, you wear the DS9 uniform. And that we'll see that when the other Federation ships show up, they'll be wearing TNG uniforms. That kind of goes out the window as we continue along, to a point where, and this is something that the newbies don't care about, and only if you're a Trek nerd you care. So Star Trek Generations, which was the first Next Generation movie after they ended their TV show, they decided, okay, we're going to be on the big screen. We got to have a new uniform. They actually made a new uniform, and if you ever bought the Generation action figures, you know what it looks like. But they realized during the first couple days of shooting, those uniforms sucked, and they were not going to work for the movie. So half of the people went and just raided the closets of the DS9 people. So like Riker in the Generations movie is wearing Sisko's uniform because that's what they had. So as we get a little deeper in, the people are going to be kind of bouncing around a little bit. So enjoy your uniform continuity. It's going to be great.
Let's face it, the less colorful uniforms on DS9 are just cooler and less dorky looking anyway.
I will say I don't know if we've seen it yet or not, but again, it's not a spoiler. Don't at me. I love the fact that these are worker class uniforms, and we'll even see Miles O'Brien roll his sleeves up, and that's something that you would never see in the Next Generation or the original series.
Right, even though you would be somebody in his job position would be wearing a worker uniform on board ship, but
well, that's another thing. We haven't really met much about Chief O'Brien yet, but if you watch the original or the Next Generation, he was a character on that show too, and we saw his handoff with Picard last episode. He was a ranked officer on TNG. When they moved him over to DS9, they made him a chief, because they didn't want him to be a ranked officer anymore. They wanted to have that kind of everyman worker. So he is.
Oh, so he went from officer to enlisted.
Well, yeah, but we don't bring that up. It just happened.
Starfleet really isn't a military organization.
Not so much, no. So a little bit more uniform fun. So all the ranked officers have what are called pips, and you'll see those little dots. O'Brien has a longer bar that is a different design. That was made just for O'Brien in DS9. That's the first time we have seen that chief bar, because it was a decision they made to kind of change his character around. Anybody else have anything aside from nerdy uniform talk? Okay, so what we'll do now, for those of you who are just joining us for the first time, and since it's only episode 2, hopefully a lot of you, we're going to ask our newbies to ask any questions that they may have after this episode and make any predictions that they may have as well too. And then we will kick them out the airlock, and us who have watched the entire show will move into a spoiler section. And we may also have some other stuff we want to talk about that makes more sense when you've watched the whole show, or in this case, when you've watched Star Trek Lower Decks. Wink, wink. Okay. Shannon, let's go to you first. Questions, predictions.
So my question is about the Bajoran earring thing. I thought that was just a Kira thing, but then we met Tanalos and he had it too. Is it like a rank thing? Do they all do it? Is it a communication device? What's up with the earring?
Yeah, so I don't think we need to worry about spoilers for that. So it is a symbol of the Bajoran people. It is a family crest in some sort. So you'll have that. The other thing too is, and you haven't really figured it out yet because we haven't been told directly, but the Bajoran people go by their last name as their main name. So Kira, her name is Kira Nerys. Her first name and her given name is Nerys, but she goes by Kira. Tana Los, his name was Los, his family name was Tana, but we go by the family name. So the Bajorans do that. It's a little different. Any other questions?
Well,
predictions?
No other questions. My predictions are obviously that we're going to have some threats and some stuff come through the wormhole, and we're not going to be done with the Kardashians, whatever, those people.
Cardassians.
Yes, those guys. And I feel like Kira's going to struggle still on if she's going to trust the Federation.
Christopher, questions, predictions?
I guess the only thing I have written down that I haven't already talked about is from the first episode. And Commander Sisko said, "My species respects life above all else." And I'm just wondering if he has ever met another human.
When did that start?
Predictions, I'm not sure. Obviously there's going to be conflict. Is the government going to fail? I guess is one of my questions. Is that provisional government going to hold together, or are other factions, like are the Cardassians and going to try to weasel their way in to one of the elements, one of the opposition elements on Bajor and try to gain a foothold, or is it going to be another threat? So what is to come? Who are going to be the main antagonist, I guess?
Nicole.
So what ended up happening to Tanalos? Like, where did he go? Did they keep him? Did they throw him in jail? Did they give him to the Cardassians? Like, what happened to him? If anything, is anything going to come of what the situation or happen from there, I guess, is my other question. And then prediction wise, I don't really have much. I think that I forgot who said it, but somebody had already mentioned Kira is going to continue to struggle. I definitely agree with that. I think she's going to have some issues going forward. I'm really interested to see how the dynamic between her and Cisco continues. I definitely am going to have my eye on that dynamic, but yeah, that's really all I have.
And Jessi's internet died, so she is not with us anymore. The one other thing I have for our newbies before we let you go, because we're now 2 episodes into this, I'd love to know who your favorite character is and also who your least favorite character is. And we'll see where we are as we continue down this road. Nicole, you're the shipper, so
well,
go for it.
It's hard to say, to be honest, because I really like a lot of the characters so far. But I would have to say, if I had to pick one, I think just because we've seen the most from him so far is Cisco. And by the way, that man has a golden voice. Like, his voice could read audiobooks. Like, he should be on the radio. Like, I love his voice. Like, I could listen to him read me a bedtime story. So I would say runner-up would probably be Odo. I really like him a lot. I guess least favorite, just because I think he's kind of annoying, is Quark. I know that's a fan favorite, so I'm probably going to get some hate for that, but maybe he'll grow on me.
Like a plague.
Or a fungus.
Like a fungus. In your ears. Shannon, favorite character, least favorite character?
I would say it wouldn't surprise anyone that the Doctor's my least favorite at this point. But that doesn't mean he won't grow on me. But at this point, he has set himself up to not be impressed. And even though I feel like we've gotten more time with the Captain Cisco in the first episode and Kira, I am fascinated by Odo. And I can't wait to learn more about him. So I have to admit, he's the most intriguing character to me at this point. And this, I'm sure, will change, but that's where I'm at right now.
Well, good for you that the next episode next week is called A Man Alone, and it is about Odo. So,
yay!
Yeah. Christopher, favorite, least favorite?
So one of my favorite characters is
People are going to judge you. Prepare yourself. Go for it.
Yeah, they should. And Shannon's going to be one of them, because one of my favorite characters so far has been Lieutenant Bashir, because he is a bumbling fool. I think he's going to be either some much needed comic relief in this show, or he has the potential to like really piss me off later on and not show any growth. And
why not both?
I'm thinking idiot savant, honestly.
He could be an excellent doctor, but a perfectly, flawed and moronic individual otherwise.
Med students, send your hate mail too.
He could be a good doctor. He could be an excellent doctor.
We've seen no proof of his doctoring skills yet.
Well, I mean, he did tell Cisco the guy needs the rest because he's been beat up. He needs the rest.
He is pretty, though, I will say. He is nice to look at.
Okay. Go ahead. Go ahead. You have your least favorite, too.
So my least favorite would be, Commander Cisco right now. And I think it's because like the path that they set him on the first episode where he, recovered from, not recovered, but like he moved on from his wife's death like that, right? Like, this is a man who's been struggling with this for years. And then he meets, this other species, and then all of a sudden he has this epiphany, and the pain that he's been experiencing, losing his wife is just now gone. No, I don't think so. And maybe it's bad writing. And I thought the acting was a little bit stilted. So maybe he'll grow on me, but right now he's not my favorite.
He's a close talker too, I notice.
Just to piggyback on what you said, I feel like we got a lot out of Cisco in the first episode, and this one we didn't. And so for all we know, he is still processing that. And maybe that's why he was such a dick to Kira about like, don't go over my head.
Not gonna lie, if somebody contacted my manager and told them what for, I would be a dick.
I mean, he wasn't wrong, but like we barely saw him this episode. For all we know, he's still processing, but I was just trying to throw in a counterpoint there because we didn't get a lot of Cisco from that, except for him standing on a step. So he's even taller than her. And he's already like much taller than her. And then also telling her not to, I mean, justifiably, but he totally threw the power trip on. I don't know. That sounds like someone that is still dealing with some major emotions and they're letting it come out a little bit at work, possibly.
To me, it sounds like a new commander having to throw his authority around and to make sure that people understand that he actually is in charge and that he's not going to be trifled with. But
I actually agree with you. I'm just playing devil's advocate because when you said that, I was like, but how do we know how he's feeling? Because we never saw like him in a private moment in his room being just like whatever.
Shannon would like some more internal dialogue.
I do.
Funny story. There's an episode that's several seasons down the road that is exactly that, and going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to it. We'll go ahead and end it there with the newbies, and before we go Beyond the Rim, no, not Beyond the Rim, that's the other show, Beyond the Wormhole, we will be back next week to talk A Man Alone. Be sure to like, subscribe, follow, check out our social medias, and leave a review. And once we come back, we will be in spoiler section. So if you do not want to get spoiled, if you haven't watched the full seasons, 7 seasons of DS9, this is where you should leave us to. So until next week, when we talk about A Man Alone, I've been Scott, and with me has been
Emily,
Mike,
Nicole,
Christopher,
Shannon,
Prentice,
and Jessi when her internet comes back. Okay, newbies, be gone.
Goodbye.
Poodles, poodles.
This is the first time Emily gets to stay. She's so excited. Well, no, it's the second time.
And it's amazing every time.
Thank you for listening to Especially the Lies, a Deep Space Nine podcast. You can find all the places to listen to and watch this podcast by searching for Especially the Lies on your podcast app or on YouTube. We want to hear from you, so join the conversation at Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review where you are listening to or watching this podcast. Especially the Lies is not affiliated with, and the podcast has not been prepared, approved, or licensed by Paramount or any other owners of the Star Trek copyright. All clips included in this podcast are the intellectual property of the respective copyright holders. They are included here for purposes of review, and no infringement is intended.
Why have you brought me here? Show yourselves. What do you want?
The Cisco has returned to us.
He arrives with questions.
There are always questions.
Welcome back to Beyond the Wormhole. I'm going to have some troubles remembering that, but we'll figure it out as we go. We are here with our folks who have watched the entire series of DS9, and I do believe all of Trek, so we'll have some good conversations there. And we're going to be talking about the questions and predictions of our newbies after they have left. So again, reminder, if you have not watched all of DS9 or don't remember what happens, you should leave now because we're going to get into spoilers. So before we get into the questions predictions, guys, I think 2 things we want to hit on is, one, Christopher mentioned the look of the aliens. Mike, do you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, I think he hit the nail on the head, really. That was very much the MO of the original Star Trek series and to a large part TNG as well. The more alien they looked, the less you were supposed to, as an audience, click with them and trust them and think that they were the good guy. Oftentimes the Klingons I think, especially look at how they looked in TOS compared to TNG. They made them a lot less human and a lot more frightening, and that was because they were the bad guy. What's interesting, though, is that Chris's perceptions are going to get flipped as the DS9 carries on, because you're going to find out that Quark and eventually Nog are heroes of the show in a big way. And while the Cardassians continue to be scum through and through, besides simple fashion lizard Garrick, we're also going to pick up things like Klingon allies, down the road. So I think it'll be fun to watch him turn on that point. But he's absolutely right up until a point that we haven't yet reached.
It's pretty spot on, and it's not entirely surprising, I guess, because I feel like it's an easy way for shows to create that hero villain dynamic. And yeah, as humans, we're likely to just assume we're somehow better in some way, I guess. Maybe not me, but
hey, we're supposed to be in utopia here.
Right.
Speaking of utopia, Prentice, you want to talk about the difference between DS9 and TNG. Go for it.
Yeah, TNG didn't have a lot of tension between the regular cast members. It was definitely Gene Roddenberry's ideal show. Utopia, peaceful interaction, involved humanity. Meanwhile, we're thrown into Deep Space Nine, and you see the tensions that we see in everyday life, and also it makes the show, the story, much more interesting to see the different perspectives, why people are motivated to do the different things they are doing, such as Kira. Look, she was part of a revolution. Now she's forced to be a bureaucrat. And that tension in her decision-making, you can understand, like, look, I want to be down with the people. I have this relationship with this person that's now a terrorist, but I used to be that. Well, why am I different from this person? And am I now being a sellout for agreeing with the Federation, which is another power taking over my parent or my planet? So you have this kind of tension between incrementalism, with Kira now saying we're getting there, we just need a Federation to get us on our feet, as opposed to other guys saying, like, no, we need to be free now. We need to have our sovereignty. We can look out for ourselves. We don't need anyone's help. So I love the tension that they explored in the show. I love how the actors really dealt with it. And I got to say, the tension between Sisko and Kira was handled very nicely, because Sisko's really cool about her going around his back. Because I've seen other kind of figures, they would not have handled it as, let's say, diplomatically. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't get mad. He just kind of told her with a smile on his face, you do that again, we will have problems. So I love how he handled that. But yeah, I would agree with what somebody said earlier, that Sisko is still kind of a cardboard figure in this season. And let's say the next two seasons of Deep Space Nine, he doesn't really come alive until he goes bald and gets to go tea and all that stuff. So it's interesting to see him develop as a person. And I'm looking forward to seeing more of him as being a holistic person instead of this kind of cardboard cutout figure we have in the first two seasons of Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, and Avery Brooks was the first to say he is acting uncomfortably in these first couple seasons because he feels like he's not being able to be himself. He doesn't like having a head of hair. He doesn't like how the writing is going in some cases, and it is showing in his performance, and it will show in his performance as we go. But you're right. I mean, as soon as he grows that goatee and shaves his head, we're off to the races. So, because I think as an actor, Brooks is able to feel more comfortable in his skin when he gets to do that.
Mm-hmm.
The only other thing I wanted to throw in there real quick is I'm waiting to see how long it takes for Nicole to ship Odo and Kira, because Nicole does love shipping, but Odo and Kira's relationship is my favorite part of this show, and Odo is by far my favorite character in all of Trek. And I love watching this first scene with him and Kira, knowing that for Kira, he is a colleague. She has been with him for a couple years. She knows who she is. But for Odo, he is already in love with her.
Yes.
And I love watching that. I love watching that dynamic and knowing that. I also do love the fact, and we'll learn about this as we go, Odo wasn't exactly a good guy. He was the head of security for DS9 when it was Terok Nor, and he knocked heads. And we see that in this episode too, where Odo says, I can just throw him in the jail. And Sisko says, no, you can't do that. Well, Odo's used to knocking heads. So I do like that is being built right away as well too. So let's go ahead and dive into the questions and predictions, and we'll do some questions first. Christopher asks, is Bajor going to fall? Is the provisional government going to make it? And anyone can chime in here.
I can't wait to see his reaction to Kai Wynn.
The real Nazi.
In that sort of going from like Kai Opaka and then that shift to Kai Wynn and her manipulation of the government and stuff. And then once the Dominion comes in and how that functions, it will be really interesting to hear his views on that shift.
Every time Nurse Ratched says, my child, I want to punch things. Every time.
And honestly, she is like one of my favorite villains because she does it so damn well. Most of us aren't gonna interact with a Gul Dukat. Like, we're not gonna interact with like that level of psycho, like evil. But we have dealt with people like Kai Wynn, that passive aggressive, manipulative, just straight up cunty. She's a Dolores Umbridge.
Anyway, I was going to say, after being in Chicago politics and running for office here, oh my God, Kai Wynn to me is the ultimate villain because these are the kind of people you meet in politics, right? Never necessarily twirling their mustaches, but with a smile on their face, a condescending remark here and there. Fletcher did an excellent job of that role. I said, you know what? After watching the whole series again recently, I said, she did a damn good job of developing that character and turning into the ultimate Star Trek villain you never saw coming. And I love how they dealt with her. I love how they gave her certain sayings that you knew that was just her being cunty, her being just condescending.
Oh, yeah.
She was the best, one of the top 5 best Star Trek villains of the entire series.
Well, and I think we need to really rave, and she's not even shown up yet, but we need to rave about the casting as well, too. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is one of my favorite movies of all time. And the fact that they went out and got Nurse Ratched to be Kai Wynn is perfect casting. Perfect casting.
And like, we obviously haven't gotten there, but the episode where she has the conflict with Keiko over the teaching of religion.
Oh yeah.
About just like
great.
And she just is so impeccable with that condescending tone. Like, I'm trying to say it in a nice voice, but I'm being a raging bitch while doing it. So it's harder for people to call me up because if I'm yelling and screaming, you can be like, look, she's unhinged. But when I do it in this particular voice, it's harder.
Yeah. 30 years later, nothing like that is in real life. Nothing at all. We don't run into that problem at all. Mike, did you have something you want to add?
Well, I mean, I guess I'll just say we haven't directly, I guess, answered Christopher's question, have we? And the answer, I unless you can correct me if my memory is faulty, but the government of Bajor doesn't fail. We do find out that there are other powers that are arguably as important as the government, and now those are, the religious aspect of it and the Kai.
Yeah, I think the provisional government it stands for the most part, but it becomes less important, especially when the Dominion comes into play.
There was an episode when they got close to having a civil over the farming machines they needed.
Yeah, it was at the moon base. The other thing too is
the moon base was the Romulans and the Bajorans. I'm talking about when Kira had to go against some of the people in the resistance. They had the machines, and Kai Wynn sent her to retrieve the machinery she needed for farms.
I know what episode you're talking about. She sets the dude's house on fire.
Right, and that was close to anything I think they got to having a civil war begin.
A lot of people say the turning point is when the Defiant shows up and the show gets really good. I truly think that the turning point for me is the first 3 episodes of season 2, which is the Circle trilogy. And that deals with this terrorism. And it really deals with these factions who try and accomplish taking over DS9 for a while and trying to boot the Federation out. And I think that 3-parter is a good example of how DS9 started to figure out it can do more with this premise than what other Trek shows would have done.
And like, I know he was asking about like the specific government structure and the provisional government, and while it might not technically fail, it's always felt like functionally it failed. So yeah, it might still be there, but you know, with Kywin and the Dominion, all that, like functionally, it didn't seem to matter.
Yeah, agreed. So the other two predictions from, well, actually, Shannon had a couple. We won't be done with the Cardassians. That's true.
Absolutely.
It is interesting. Von Armstrong is, as we mentioned, prolific when it comes to Trek. I wonder if there's like an alternate reality out there where Gul Dunar is the Gul Damar that we get to know and love, because you know it's interesting. They were kind of setting up the dynamic where Dunar comes to Sisko's help. Sisko doesn't really appreciate the fact that he's being pointed out that Dunar told him he needed his help. So it would have been interesting if that character would have carried on, but we'll have other Cardassians.
Yeah. And I mean, it makes sense that the Cardassians will stick around throughout the series because they were the occupier and they're in the region. That's a solid prediction.
And then also Shannon says the wormhole will also bring more threats, which we haven't seen yet, but absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
That's a very logical thing to predict. Like, oh, all of a sudden we can reach new areas. Yeah, you're going to have a threat.
Mm-hmm. And then finally for her, Kira is going to continue to deal with the conflict of her divided loyalties. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And it will continue, and it will be a defining factor of her character throughout the show.
Do we think, so when Kira has her conversation with Kaiopaka, do you think Nicole will cry?
Good point. Knowing Nicole, she cries at everything, so potentially.
Because I'm just thinking, like, that was a really kind of emotional, hard-hitting interaction between the two of them.
Yeah. The other thing, I can't help but think, again, going back to there's an alternate reality out there where Ro Loren is in this position. And it would be interesting. I love Kira. And so I'm so glad that Michelle Forbes didn't take the role and we got Nana Visitor. But it'd be interesting to see how Ro Loren would factor into this. And for those who have watched the third season of Star Trek Picard, which if you haven't, you should,
do it.
Ro comes back, and I think we get to see a little bit of that play of the divided loyalties again with Ro in that. So
absolutely.
That's interesting. Let's see. I think we covered most everything from Shannon and Christopher. Now, Nicole, whatever happened to Tana Los? Oh,
I don't think anyone cared, actually. I think he probably just got stuck in a brig and they're like, someone else is going to deal with his dumbass.
The important factor is to note that when he was given the opportunity to go with the Cardassians or with the Federation, he said, okay, I'm not going with the Cardassians again.
Yeah, that really didn't take a whole lot of thought.
Well, and there was a little bit of a callback without saying it to the Picard torture in TNG.
Yeah.
I'm blanking the Four Lights episodes. Yes. Because they used the same kind of pain-giving device on Picard that they used on Tana Los. So he was tortured. And Bashir, I think, points out that there was some scarring there. So that was definitely a reference to what the Cardassians can do. And we'll see more of what the Cardassians can do as we go on. I did love, and I tried to keep a straight face when she said it, Nicole said Bashir is like an idiot savant. Would anyone have any thoughts on that?
Oh, wow. I can't wait for that episode where they figure out he's been genetically modified.
It was not planned at this point. This was never in the show Bible. It was never a plan that either Alexander Siddig or the writers had, but it works. When you find out that he is genetically engineered, basically he is, without being diagnosed, he's an autistic guy and because of how he's been messed around with. And he is so careful to not show off because he doesn't want to get caught and thrown out, that when you watch these early episodes and these early seasons, you can kind of see it. You can see that, okay, Bashir is acting the buffoon because he has to. He has to hold back. And we will see when he gets outed, he no longer holds back, and O'Brien says he's being a douchebag.
Exactly.
I mean, some of that tracks and some of it doesn't. I don't think, you're basically saying that the way he ran to Cisco, like, Captain, the tailor tried to recruit me to be a spy, like that kind of thing doesn't really play into.
Oh, he's just naive at that point.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it'll be really interesting. And I guess on that same note, I guess I want to point out that I'm surprised that nobody mentioned Garrick at all in predictions or
it's true.
questions.
It's true. I was actually worried. You all were on a side message for those who have watched the show, and I was like, let's not hint too much at what Garrick becomes. We didn't have to worry about it. The newbies didn't even bring it up.
I can't believe that they didn't at least ask the question, will we see Garrick again?
I know.
Because he was so central to this entire plot.
The timing is perfect. As we mentioned, and Andrew Robinson a while ago said that he played Garrick as being sexually attracted to Bashir. But Lower Decks, a week ago, basically gave it all to us. Garrick has a holodeck version of Bashir that he is in love with and hangs out with.
They're like married or something.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, technically speaking, they're both alternate reality versions of Bashir and Garrick. But yeah, they're a couple.
And hearing Andrew Robinson again playing Garrick in that episode was quite nice.
That was actually Alexander Siddig too.
Yep. Mm-hmm. If you haven't done so already, go check out the audiobook A Stitch in Time, which is a Garrick story written by Andrew Robinson, read by Andrew Robinson. And it's a good backstory to Garrick in his time before coming to DS9.
Christopher had mentioned that Bashir wanted to be like special or be a spy. Little does he know we're going to get a Bashir spy episode.
A couple.
It will be interesting to see what he thinks of our good man Bashir.
Yes. 00 whatever. Does anyone else have anything they want to add before we close out this conversation?
Baby Jesus.
What?
Sorry, I was looking up a Stitch in Time audiobook. It's $146.
It's you can use an Audible credit, and if you don't have Audible, I will send you a credit.
I was kind of surprised Jessi was just like, meh, it was okay.
Well, then her internet died, so she may have had more to say if we had her the whole episode.
Unfortunate. Since our last episode, she really seemed to gravitate towards Kira, and this was a Kira-focused episode, so it would have been nice if she had been able to stick around, but maybe we'll get it on the next recording.
Agreed. I'm looking forward to the next episode because, as I've already mentioned, Odo is my favorite character, and this is the first Odo episode, A Man Alone, which I haven't watched in a long time, so I don't know if I even like the episode or not. I just know it's an Odo episode. That's all I got. Prentice, Mike, you want to have anything you guys want to add?
I don't think so.
No, I think we covered everything. I think it's good. I look forward to next week.
You haven't run away screaming yet, so we're winning the fight. This is good.
I'm excited to get to watch another episode because it's been 3 weeks and I kept thinking about going ahead and I shouldn't.
Be good. Okay, so we'll go ahead and end it there. Again, thank you so much for joining us in a second episode of this. We've got 170 some odd to go, so hang in there. Be sure to like, subscribe, and follow. Join us on our social medias. And if you can, please leave us a review. Apple is the best way to do that, but you can also leave a comment on Spotify or a review on Audible as well. Any of those really does help the show get out to more people. Fight the algorithm. Help us out. So until next week, when we talk about Odo, I've been Scott, and with me has been
Emily.
Mike.
Prentice.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.
All right.
Don't let the Cardis keep you down.
May I show you some of our latest fashions? Perhaps some silk lingerie from Kraus 4.
Watch your tongue, Cardassian, or I'll rip it out and eat it.